DJ Convoy's got a nice little comment. Conrad and his circus of dorks. I agree with
Yeah.
that. Anytime you can, I tweeted out something the other day. It was a little controversial. I said Conrad has done some real damage to wrestling fandom and feeding into the tribalism and the idiots, and I kind of stand by that.
Yeah, you know what? I think that's a good segue. I happen to completely agree with you, and this is coming from a guy that was a fan of Conrad early on because I liked the show with Bruce Pritchard. In fact, the very first thing I ever did on a podcast was interview Conrad Thompson. He was on the Wrestling Observer message board, and he and I became friendly because I was a frequent commenter in the Something to Wrestle With thread in there. And he would comment in there all the time. I DM'd him one time, said, "Hey, I've been doing podcasting for a while. I had not." And I was like, "I'd love to have you on my show, man. It's kind of a throw. I just invented a show." And then he was gracious enough to call me, and we did like an hour together.
Wow.
And he didn't know me from Adam, and I didn't even have a real podcast. I made the whole thing up, but then I was able to put it on a show. And I created my first podcast, the Podcast Express, because of that interview. So that was really cool of him to do, but he absolutely feeds into the negativity because he doesn't care. It makes him money. Mm-hmm. He likes the tribalism because he can profit off of it, and he likes to try to discredit Dave Meltzer. But then he's like, I'm a longtime subscriber. I don't have anything against Dave. And then, but here, what do you think about this? And he's lining them up and setting them up to go ahead and try to do this big takedown. When in reality, before Bischoff got that podcast, 83 Weeks, him and Dave were friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he used to do Dave's show. They talked all the time. In fact, John Muse came here and told the story, but he reached out to Dave to get advice on creative, and then that's how John Muse got connected with Eric Bischoff to go and work for the WCW relaunch. The fact of the matter is here's the reason why I call Eric Bischoff a grifter. People are like, "You're using that out of context." I'm like, no, I'm not. Because a grifter, right? It's like people say, well, grifters are guys that they say they're giving you one thing, but they're not, and they're ripping you off. That's kind of what he's doing because he's creating fake opinions to be able to get you guys, to trigger you guys to have an emotion, so that way you will consume. You'll consume the product. You'll click the links. You'll subscribe. You'll pay for he's full of shit, and you guys are falling for it. So he absolutely is a grifter.
Conrad's a grifter. He comes out here and he acts like, that's why guys like us listened to him back in 2016 when his podcast launched. He acted like one of us. Well, golly gee, I'm a Wrestling Observer subscriber and I've been a wrestling fan for this long, and I'm just a humble old Southern boy who likes his wrestling, and he's a fucking millionaire.
Yeah.
Right. And his whole podcast empire is just a grift to get people to buy mortgages.
Yes.
That's all it is.
It almost worked on me. I almost, because they said they can get you the lowest interest rate, so I called him before I bought my last house. I didn't end up going with him because he did not actually get me a lower interest rate. And in fact, because I'm in California, they didn't service California. They were going to basically connect me with somebody that would, and they would get a cut of the money. I was like, well, no, I'll just go with the person my realtor wanted me to go with in the first place. So I did that. So, but I did call them. I almost got a mortgage from Conrad.
When he got that interview with Jim Crockett Jr. before he died, I'm like, I have to hear this. I'm a student of history. It was $30 fucking to listen to an interview with an old man who's almost senile.
Did you ever end up hearing it?
No, I'm a cheap ass. I wasn't going to pay $30.
I'll send it to you.
That's why I like my. I should have just came to you in the first place.
Why didn't you just ask? I got it.
I didn't even think about it. I should have, because we had a podcast at the time. I don't know why I didn't think about it. But yeah, that's the thing though, is he is the king grifter because he acts like us. Well, I'm just like you guys. I'm a fan. And then it's just, you feed the negativity. Like, if you ever want to see the biggest truck, and I've just gotten to the point where I'm so fed up with Twitter, the idiots on Twitter. I'm calling them out like, you're a fucking dork. Like the coach was out there Jonathan Coachman was tweeting stupid shit. Like, this guy works for the PFL and he's going to talk about AEW crowds. So I'm just like, all right, you're a fucking dork. And Bix retweeted that. So I'm like, oh, good. That just expanded my reach with Bix retweeting me calling Coachman a dork. That made me happy. So I'm just going to keep doing it. And if you look at Dave's tweets, you just see the biggest troglodytes on the internet, right? And they're all so many. If they're if they're under 30, they just have Roman Reigns avatars. If they're over 40, they all listen to ad-free shows and Jim Cornette. And at least with Jim Cornette, it's not a grift. That's him. Like,
yeah, I 100% believe that Jim Cornette is not creating fake opinions to get over. I think he's defending his real opinions so much so that he was willing to lose a lot of friends, which is what happened. But he wasn't doing it. I feel like Bruce Pritchard and Eric Bischoff specifically created characters for a podcast because they were conned into it by Conrad because, hey, if you just trash Dave Meltzer and you trash AEW, well, it's with Bischoff specifically, if you trash AEW, we could actually, that's what the algorithm likes. And you and I both know that for a fact because our shows where we were pretty tough on AEW and I put on the Tony Khan face thumbnail, they do better than our normal. Like tonight's episode is us praising AEW. I know for a fact it's not going to do as good in the YouTube clips as it would if we came on and trashed them. But I'm not going to come on here and give a fake opinion because I know because it'll make us money. I'm just not willing to do that. Now that neither are you.
Well, we got ourselves into some trouble with some of the VOW fan base because like
they can kiss my whole ass.
I know. Well, we'll fuck with the algorithm. And Joe defended us. Joe's like, it's a bit that they do. And I'm like, because it is. And we talked about it beforehand. And like the proof is in the pudding. When we do that, our numbers are a lot better. When we're hard on AEW, people love that shit because there's nothing people love more than to defend the Rape Factory. Like they eat it up.